Welcome to our second video on best practices for writing local quality assessment items, where we will examine language, vocabulary, and constructing an effective STEM. A resource called Checklist for Quality Item Design is in the resources folder for this presentation and contains each checklist used in this video. The objectives of this session are: districts will be able to implement best practices for language and vocabulary when constructing item types. Districts will also understand how to construct an effective STEM. And lastly, districts will evaluate and identify exemplar and non-exemplar question stems and answer choices. We begin by diving into best practices for language and vocabulary within our assessment items. There is a lot to cover, so we will highlight a couple of examples to kickstart our exploration. When we talk about language and vocabulary in assessment items, we're essentially asking a series of critical questions. Is the item consistently using the appropriate verb tense? Are there any grammatical or spelling errors that need addressing? Does it avoid inappropriate colloquial or idiomatic language? Now, here's a key consideration. Is the item structured in active voice? Unless the passive voice is necessary or makes comprehension easier. Another crucial point is vocabulary and academic language appropriate for the grade level it's intended for. Are the words with multiple meanings avoided for clarity? Let's not overlook pronouns. Are they clear, necessary, and avoiding any unclear usage? Furthermore, how do we ensure that our sentences aren't overly complex or lengthy, maintaining clarity and comprehension? It's quite a list, but let's sum it up succinctly. Essentially, we're striving for grammatical correctness throughout. Our questions need to be structured with precision. Now, let's put the theory into practice and take a closer look at an exemplar item to see how these principles manifest in a real-world scenario. Let's take a closer look at an exemplar item to understand how these principles play out in real assessments. Imagine a high school band class with the TEAC 3B focusing on interpreting music symbols and expressive terms related to dynamics, tempo, and articulation. A common standard band course would use a TEAC like this. The item presents a question. Which of the following markings indicates slow tempo? The answer choices include allegro, adagio, presto, and forte. Now, let's run through our checklist to evaluate this item. Is the item written using the appropriate verb tense throughout? It seems to be. I don't spot any grammatical or spelling errors. It also seems to be free of inappropriate colloquial or idiomatic language, which is essential for clarity. While some terms might not be colloquial, they seem crucial for a high school band course. These terms likely align to the grade level expectations and are essential for success in the course. Regarding words with multiple meanings, there may be nuances like allegro meaning happy in Italian, but within the context of the band course, it is acceptable. Checking for pronouns, sentence complexity, and consistent language use all seem to be in order. In essence, this exemplar item fits well within the parameters of a band assessment and effectively tests the understanding of tempo markings without falling into the pitfalls we've discussed. Pause the video and use the checklist to determine if the item meets best practices for language and vocabulary. Once complete, resume the video. Let's examine this item in detail. The sentence, star parties do not take place in cities because blank. Let's look at our answer choices. Firstly, is it written using the appropriate verb tense throughout? Yes, that seems to maintain the correct verb tense. How about grammatical and spelling errors? Well, it looks like there are several errors spotted in the differing spellings of cities and answers A and B. Moving on, is it free of inappropriate colloquial or idiomatic language? It appears not, especially considering the phrase, more light in a city than dead armadillos on a country road. This might confuse readers unfamiliar with the idiom. However, it does seem to maintain an active voice and avoids vocabulary that's not grade level appropriate. Words with multiple meanings, unnecessary pronouns, and overly complex sentences. Going through this checklist, it becomes apparent how critical these elements are when crafting assessments. Identifying these potential grammatical pitfalls is crucial, especially when creating localized assessments. This exercise serves as a valuable reminder of the meticulous scrutiny required in developing items. It ensures that our assessment items meet the desired standards of clarity and accuracy. Moving along to our next section, constructing an effective STEM or question for an assessment item. Diving into constructing an effective STEM or question for assessment items. Remember, in the assessment realm, the STEM is the core question itself, distinct from the answer choices, which are termed as items. The first question we asked, is the STEM meaningful by itself? It's crucial that the STEM makes sense and stands alone without the answer choices. I'll illustrate this shortly. Moving on, does the STEM only contain relevant information? Is it structured as a clear question or partial sentence? These criteria are fundamental in defining an effective STEM. By ensuring the STEM meets these standards, being meaningfully independent and containing only relevant information presented as clear question or a partial sentence, we establish the groundwork for a well-constructed assessment item. Let's emphasize the importance of a meaningful STEM in our assessments. A critical aspect, the STEM must present a definite problem. Why? Because a clear problem allows students to focus on the intended learning outcome. Consider this. When a STEM lacks a clear problem, students rely on vague descriptions or make inferences rather than directly demonstrating their achievement of the learning outcome. Our goal is to precisely assess whether students can achieve that learning outcome, not to add unnecessary complexity or superfluous details to the STEM. Anything beyond a definite problem might dilute the assessment's purpose and not add meaningful value to the question. Let's examine an example of a STEM that lacks meaning. Which of the following is a true statement? This lacks a specific problem. It's broad, asking for truth without focusing on a particular concept. The issue here is clarity. The STEM does not prompt students to identify the specific knowledge being assessed. There's no mention of the oxygen plant need or the role of sugars in plant survival. It's too general. In contrast, a better STEM focuses on a direct question. Animals and plants use substances that cycle through the environment. Which substance is needed by plants to survive and is released into the environments by animals? This precise question about carbon dioxide allows for a clear assessment of whether students grasp this concept. The takeaway, a meaningful STEM is essential. It ensures clarity, guiding students to the core of what's being assessed. By crafting a precise STEM, we gather data that truly reflects the student's understanding, leaving no room for vague inferences and ensuring an appropriate assessment of their knowledge. In crafting a STEM, we must ensure it avoids irrelevant material. Including irrelevant material can significantly impact the reliability and validity of the test scores. Studies by Haldana and Dowling highlighted this issue, emphasizing the importance of streamlining assessment content. Consider this example. The left-sided question contains irrelevant details about wars and gasoline, which students don't need to answer the question effectively. This extraneous information might confuse students and divert their focus from the actual assessment objective. On the other hand, the modified question on the right focuses solely on relevant material about energy resources, directly addressing the intended assessment, identifying renewable resources. By eliminating irrelevant information from the STEM, we create a clear path for students to demonstrate their understanding without unnecessary distractions. This ensures that the data obtained truly reflects their knowledge, enhancing the reliability and effectiveness of the assessment. Pause the video and use the checklist to determine if the item meets the components of constructing an effective STEM. Once complete, resume the video. Let's assess an example of a STEM from a high school floral design course centered around gardenias. We applied our checklist. Is the STEM meaningful by itself? Unfortunately, it falls short. The STEM lacks specificity, failing to articulate what students need to know about gardenias, making it less effective as a standalone question. Regarding relevance, it seems to contain only relevant information, but in terms of structure, it's more of a partial sentence. None of the phrases end conclusively like a proper question. In summary, this STEM would benefit from rephrasing to enhance clarity and direct focus on the intended learning outcomes about gardenias. This practice highlights the significance of crafting STEMs that are not just clear and meaningful, but also precisely aligned to the learning objectives. Pause the video and use the checklist to determine if the item meets the components of constructing an effective STEM. Once complete, resume the video. Note that this is a modified version of practice question 1. When modifying a question, it is crucial to pinpoint the specific knowledge students need, aligning with the cognitive verbs depth of knowledge discussed earlier. Consider revising a question like, the balance between flowers easy to grow and those with a long vase life is important. Which flower has a short vase life? This revised STEM becomes meaningful by itself, focusing on identifying the flower with the shortest vase life. It contains only relevant information and operates as a clear question. Utilizing questions like this in a floral design class can effectively gauge students' understanding and yield valuable data aligned with the learning objectives. Let's review what we've covered in this module. We've covered language, vocabulary, and constructing effective stems. For language, we aim for appropriate verb tense, no grammatical spelling errors, no inappropriate language, active voice, grade level vocabulary, clarity on word meanings, clear pronouns, simple sentences, and consistent language. Shifting to constructing effective stems, we ask, is the stem meaningful alone? Does it contain solely relevant details? And finally, does it pose a question? These guidelines ensure our stems are focused, relevant, and clear, aligning with effective assessment practices. Remember, these checklists and more can be found in the resources folder for this presentation, titled Quality Item Design Checklist for Districts Used to Vet Assessment Items. Thank you for joining our webinar on implementing student growth measures, best practices for writing quality assessment items, where we explored language, vocabulary, and constructing an effective STEM. Please view our sister sessions to learn more about quality item design.